They say destiny is shaped by choices, discipline, or the strength of your will. But what if everything you were taught about how your life unfolds is incomplete? What if the true architecture of your future is not built while you are awake, but while you sleep? 40 days. That is the number that appears when destiny compresses itself. 40 days wandering in the desert before identity becomes unbreakable. 40 days of rain before the world is rewritten. 40 days between resurrection and ascension before a new era begins. Scripture was not describing suffering. It was describing a cycle of temporal reorganization, a hidden law of time. Jean-Pierre Garnier Malet called it the acceleration of horizons, a phenomenon where the future moves faster than you, edits your path, then returns to meet you in the present. And every night during sleep, you cross 12 invisible doors, 12 thresholds where your double, the version of you who lives ahead in time, adjusts the probabilities you will experience tomorrow. Science has been circling this truth without knowing its name. In REM sleep, memory dissolves and reforms. Neural circuits prune themselves with mathematical precision. Emotional burdens are reorganized. The brain rehearses futures before you wake into them. And yet, you think nothing happened. But something did. Something always does. Because inside every cycle of 40 days, there is a smaller secret, a synthesis that takes only 3 days. 3 nights where the timeline compresses, the future becomes dense, and the field prepares a turning point you will only recognize later. The question is not whether this process is happening. It is happening every night. The real question is whether you will sleep blindly or step consciously through the doors that rewrite your destiny before morning.
Every ancient text hints at a truth modern science is only beginning to understand. Time is not a straight line. It is a layered field, alive, responsive, and constantly folding into itself. And within that living field, human destiny reorganizes in cycles. The most powerful of them lasts exactly 40 days. 40 days is not a symbol of suffering. It is a period of internal rearrangement. When Moses ascended the mountain, when Jesus entered the desert, when the rain rewrote the earth during the flood, the pattern was not coincidence. It was a revelation. Identity only stabilizes after 40 days of energetic reconfiguration. The future needs time to descend into form. Garnier Malet described this descent as the meeting of 2 velocities of the self. One part of you moves through time slowly, living the days. Another part, the double, advances at a speed you cannot imagine. It sees what you cannot see. It avoids what you do not perceive. It prepares the path before your feet touch the ground. And the doorway where these 2 versions meet is sleep. Every night the body enters a choreography older than language. Neurons fire in patterns that resemble storms. Memories rearrange. Emotional residues are dissolved. Patterns inherited from your past loosen their hold. In this silent work, the future compresses itself and returns to you in fragments, sensations, intuitions. The parousia, the arrival, is not an event in the sky. It is an inner alignment that happens in darkness. The tragedy is that most people sleep as if nothing sacred were taking place. They treat the night as an absence, not a construction. Yet within the 40-day cycle, every dream, every moment of stillness, every shift in coherence becomes a blueprint for the timeline you will soon call your life.
The law of accelerated time. Time does not move at a single speed. That is the first rupture you must accept before entering the deeper architecture of destiny. We were trained to believe that past, present, and future follow each other like footsteps on a road. But Garnier Malet demonstrated something far more unsettling. Every horizon of perception becomes the particle of a horizon even greater, moving in a velocity your ordinary senses cannot track. This means you are never in one place. You are always in 2. The physical self, slow, dense, anchored to linear hours, and the double, subtle, accelerated, traveling ahead in a dimension where events unfold long before they appear in your physical life. What you call intuition is often nothing more than the echo of your faster self returning with information. In Scripture, this concept hides beneath metaphors that people took literally. When the prophets spoke of visions arriving before the event, when Daniel interpreted timelines, when John revealed what is and was and is to come, they were describing a world where time folds into itself and sends messages backward. Revelation 1 verse 8 captured it in a single sentence. I am the Alpha and the Omega. Not beginning and end, simultaneity. To live without understanding this law is to walk blind toward outcomes already shaped. To live with awareness of it is to participate in the editing of your own timeline. The double moves ahead, negotiating potentials. You move here, feeling their consequences. And the bridge between the two speeds of consciousness is not meditation, not discipline, not effort. It is sleep. The only moment in which both versions of you operate in compatible velocities. Every night, without exception, the future is adjusting itself inside you. The 12 doors of time. Every night, as consciousness withdraws from the world, you cross 12 thresholds that do not appear in any map but shape every version of your future. Garnier Malet described these portals as passages where the O accelerated, the double, reorganizes events, adjusts deviations, corrects routes, and devolves to the O lent the possibility of living a more coherent timeline. 12 doors, 12 edits, 12 negotiations. In the biblical imagination, this number repeats like a pulse. 12 tribes, 12 gates of the New Jerusalem, 12 disciples walking with a man who moved through time differently. The ancients understood something we forgot. The human path is not a single road, but a labyrinth of thresholds where identity is recalibrated. When you fall asleep, your consciousness does not disappear, it transitions. It steps into the first door, the gate of detachment, where the noise of the day releases its grip. Then the second door, the gate of memory, where experiences are sifted, categorized, stripped of excess. And so it moves, door after door, each one refining the version of you that will wake. Science describes these transitions as sleep stages, but the language is too mechanical. REM cycles are not just neurochemical storms, they are negotiations with potential futures. They are edits made in silence. The double, moving ahead in accelerated time, brings back the templates of events you are likely to meet, not fixed outcomes, but configurations, possibilities sculpted by your inner world. The more aligned your inner world, the more open the doors remain. The more constricted, the more they close. Most people move through these gates unconsciously, letting fear, unresolved memories, and scattered desires shape their next version. But those who learn to cross the 12 doors with intention begin to alter the architecture of their destiny, because the doors do not just open to the night, they open to the future. The sacred 40-day window. There are numbers that function as symbols and odd numbers that function as laws. 40 is not symbolic, it is structural. It marks the exact span of time necessary for identity to dissolve, reorganize, and re-emerge in a new configuration, seja in the spirit, the body, or the consciousness. Every major transformation in Scripture unfolds under this cycle. 40 days of rain to wash the earth into a new beginning. 40 days in the desert to deprogram old beliefs and firm a mission. 40 days between resurrection and ascension to stabilize a new identity that had never existed before. These stories were not about punishment or endurance, they were descriptions of temporal mechanics perceived intuitively by men who saw time from inside. Modern neuroscience confirms the same window. It takes approximately 4 to 6 weeks, the biological equivalent of 40 days, for the brain to consolidate new neural pathways, dismantle old emotional circuits, and stabilize a new internal baseline. Neuroplasticity is not instant.
Transformation requires repetition inside a measurable, sacred span.
Garnier Malet's model reveals why. Your double, moving in accelerated time, needs a full cycle to synchronize your slow identity with the version already formed ahead. The future cannot simply appear, it must descend gradually, reorganizing the subconscious, pruning patterns, dissolving timelines that no longer sustain your next self. During these 40 days, sleep becomes the primary workshop of destiny. Each night, as you pass through the 12 doors, fragments of the future return to you. Small shifts in perception, sudden intuitions, emotional releases, coincidences that seem accidental but mark the alignment between two speeds of existence. 40 days is the cosmic threshold where your life stops being a continuation of the past and begins to align with a future that already exists, waiting only for your coherence. This is the sacred window, a womb where timelines reorganize. The 3-day synthesis. If the 40-day cycle is the great chamber where destiny reorganizes, the final 3 days are the crucible, the moment in which everything that was rearranged in silence becomes irreversible. 3 days, that is all the universe needs to condense a new identity into form. Scripture guarded this secret in plain sight. Jonah inside the belly of the great fish, Jesus in the tomb, Saul blind for 3 days before becoming Paul. Every metamorphosis required the same duration, a suspension of the old self long enough for the new one to take root. These were not metaphors of suffering, they were descriptions of synthesis, the point at which the timeline collapses into inevitability. Once the 3 days complete their course, the future no longer negotiates, it descends. From the perspective of neuroscience, this collapse makes sense. It takes approximately 72 hours for deep emotional memories to reconfigure after a catalytic experience. During this window, REM sleep intensifies. Dreams become more symbolic, more vivid, more charged with unspoken meaning. The brain rehearses new patterns and discards the remnants of pathways that no longer match who you are becoming. Garnier Malet's theory adds the missing dimension. Your double, moving far ahead, uses these 3 nights to finalize adjustments between your slow identity and your accelerated self. It is during this synthesis that probabilities narrow, choices settle, and the future solidifies into the version that will soon appear in your waking life. This is why every turning point feels like it happened suddenly, yet somehow you already knew. It is not intuition, it is recognition, because your future always arrives 3 days before you do. The synthesis is not a ritual, it is a mechanism, a law encoded in the architecture of time. While you sleep, your future edits you. Most people believe sleep restores the body. Few understand that it also restores the timeline. Every night, while the world falls silent, your body crosses into a state where consciousness no longer obeys the linear rhythm of hours. It is in this invisible interval that the future works on you. Neuroscientists describe REM as a storm of electrical activity, but storms are not chaos, they are reorganizers. During REM, the hippocampus sifts through memories, deciding which ones to reinforce and which ones to dismantle. Emotional residues are pruned with surgical precision. Neural networks are strengthened or erased. The brain does not merely store experience, it edits. Garnier Malet's theory adds the missing dimension. Your double,
moving far ahead, uses these 3 nights to finalize adjustments between your slow identity and your accelerated self. It is during this synthesis that probabilities narrow, choices settle, and the future solidifies into the version that will soon appear in your waking life. This is why every turning point feels like it happened suddenly, yet somehow you already knew. It is not intuition, it is recognition, because your future always arrives 3 days before you do. The synthesis is not a ritual, it is a mechanism, a law encoded in the architecture of time.
When the future collapses into the present. There is a moment, subtle, brief, almost imperceptible, when the future stops being a possibility and becomes a presence. It is not a miracle, not a sign, not an external event. It is a silent collapse, a convergence between 2 speeds of the same being. Garnier Malet called this the meeting of horizons. Physics calls it collapsed superposition. The Bible calls it parousia. Parousia was never about an apparition in the sky. It was about an inner arrival. The moment in which what was ahead in time finally finds alignment in the body, mind, and emotion. The moment when the double stops negotiating and simply delivers the definitive script of what you are ready to live. Science observes these collapses without naming them. A sudden decision that feels inevitable. A perception that shifts overnight. A relationship that clicks or dissolves without warning. A creative insight that appears fully formed as if arriving from elsewhere. Neurons fire in unprecedented patterns, consolidating a mental structure that did not exist the day before. A new identity has installed itself. Biblical narratives always described this descent. When the fullness of time had come, the day of visitation, the appointed season. The text never pointed outward, it pointed inward, to the instant when the eternal crosses into the temporal. When the future collapses into the present, life stops feeling random. You begin to notice a precision that was always there, but invisible while you vibrated out of alignment with your own destiny. Coincidences cluster, paths straighten, choices feel guided instead of forced. You stop pushing life, and life begins pulling you. This is the true parousia, the silent arrival of what had always been moving in your direction, waiting only for your emotional coherence. The future does not knock, it enters when you match its frequency. Practical Guide: How to Live Your 40 Days. Transformation is not a mystical accident, it is a protocol. For 40 days, your life enters a field of silent reorganization, and the more conscious you are, the faster the future can align itself with what you truly want to live. The first principle is coherence. Your double works with your emotional frequency, not your intentions. So, the work begins with alignment. Every morning, pause for 60 seconds and ask one question. What future am I emotionally rehearsing today? Because the future you rehearse is the future your double will reinforce. The second principle is night questioning. Before sleep, speak to the future that is ahead of you in time. The question does not need to be complex. Ask quietly. Lead me toward the version of myself that already knows the way. This opens the first of the 12 doors. It gives your double permission to adjust probabilities that you, awake, would resist. The third principle is silence. Not external silence, but internal silence. The conscious refusal to feed unnecessary conflicts, involuntary dramas, or stories that weaken your timeline. Silence stabilizes the field. It stops temporal leakage. The fourth principle
is emotional pruning. During the 40 days, whenever an old pattern emerges, do not fight it. Observe. Recognize it as an echo of the past trying to survive. When you stop feeding it, it dissolves during sleep. The fifth principle is devotion to small consistencies. The new identity does not need grand gestures. It needs quiet repetition. The brain reorganizes itself through micro-decisions that accumulate until they become inevitable. And the final principle, expect realignment. Coincidences, endings, beginnings, unexpected invitations, none of this is random within the 40-day cycle. It is your double tightening the timeline. Live these 40 days with intention, and the future will approach faster. Revelation. In the end, everything you are becoming already exists. The future is not a slow construction, it is a return. The version of you that lives ahead of time is not trying to create a new destiny, it is trying to remind you of a destiny already written into the structure of reality. Garnier Malet stated that the horizon of a particle becomes the particle of a larger horizon. Scripture affirmed the same truth in different language. I am the Alpha and the Omega. Not a beginning that moves toward an end, but a totality that already contains everything. Science, without realizing it, is approaching this same point. Neuroplasticity shows that identity is not fixed. Sleep research proves that the brain rehearses futures before you live them.
Quantum physics reveals that the observer shapes outcomes. Everything points to the same conclusion. You do not walk toward the future. You collapse into the version of it that matches your coherence. This is the quiet truth behind the sacred cycles. 40 days reorganize identity. 3 days synthesize destiny. 12 doors adjust the path. And every night while you sleep, your double prepares the version of tomorrow that your emotional frequency can sustain. The tragedy is that most people surrender these mechanisms to chance. They sleep without awareness. They live without alignment. They react to timelines they never consciously chose. But the moment you understand the architecture of time, a different life becomes possible. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop insisting on urgencies that do not belong to your path. You stop asking the universe for what is already waiting for you. Because the future does not need to be created. It only needs to be matched. When coherence meets destiny, the parousia takes place, not in the sky, but within the self. It is the moment you remember that the future has always been inside you, moving toward the present with every breath, every night, every silent crossing of the doors. Your destiny is not arriving, it is awakening.